The text message arrived at exactly 3:47 p.m., just as I was arranging the anniversary party decorations in our pristine living room. 20 years of marriage, and Maren still couldn't spell definitely correctly. Blizzard shut the road. I can't get back from the trip. Definitely snowed in. So sorry, baby. We'll make it up to you. Love you. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at my phone, then at the smart home display showing the live weather feed. Sunny skies, 72 degrees, not a cloud in sight, let alone snow. The traffic cameras on Highway 94 showed clear, dry pavement stretching toward Minneapolis. My name is Elias Crowley, and I'm not an idiot. I'm a senior network analyst for Meridian Tech, which means I know how to find information that people think they've hidden. I also know when someone is lying to me, especially when they're doing it badly. I walked to our bedroom and opened Maren's walk-in closet. Her conference travel suitcase was gone, along with the new black dress she'd bought last week. The receipt was still in the shopping bag. Victoria's Secret, $200 worth of lingerie I'd never seen her wear. Our daughter Ruby was upstairs, probably live streaming to her followers about how cringe her parents were. At 17, she had perfected the art of making me feel ancient with just a look. The anniversary party was supposed to start in 2 hours. 30 guests, catered food, champagne, all to celebrate 2 decades of what I was rapidly realizing had been an elaborate performance. I pulled up Maren's location on our shared family app. According to her phone, she was at the Grandview Hotel downtown. Not exactly the Minneapolis Conference Center she'd claimed to be visiting. The pieces clicked together with the satisfying precision of a well-written algorithm. Maren worked in pharmaceutical sales for Pinnacle Health Solutions. Her regional manager was a guy named Nolan Trent, 46, married, the kind of artificially confident middle management type who wore expensive cologne and talked loudly in restaurants. For the past 6 months, every conversation Maren had involved Nolan somehow. Nolan thinks we should restructure the territory. Nolan says the new quotas are aggressive but achievable. Nolan and I have to work late on the Morrison account. I opened my laptop and accessed our phone records through the carrier's website. Maren's call log told a story that made my stomach clench. Dozens of calls to Nolan's number, many lasting over an hour, most happening after 10 p.m. The pattern went back 4 months. The doorbell rang. Our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, stood on the porch holding a casserole dish, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Is everything ready for the big celebration?" she asked, craning her neck to peer past me into the house. "I saw the catering truck earlier. How exciting." "Actually," I said, feeling something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest, "there's been a change of plans." I spent the next hour making calls. The guests were disappointed but understanding. Family emergency had to postpone, so sorry for the short notice. The caterer was less understanding but agreed to a reduced fee since the food was already prepared. Then I sat in my home office and did what I do best. I dug deeper. Maren's company credit card statements showed a pattern of hotel charges, always on days when she claimed to be in client meetings. Her mileage reports didn't match the GPS data from her car. She'd been padding her expense account while conducting her affair on company time. By 6 p.m., I had built a comprehensive file. Photos of Nolan's car in the Grandview Hotel parking garage, time-stamped and cross-referenced with Maren's location data. Screenshots of their call patterns, expense report discrepancies. Even a photo I'd found on Nolan's public social media from last month. Him and Maren at a restaurant, sitting closer than colleagues should, her hand on his arm. I opened Facebook and updated my relationship status to single. Then I posted a photo of our anniversary party setup with the caption, 20 years of marriage celebration postponed due to weather. Apparently there's a blizzard in downtown Minneapolis. Who knew? I included a screenshot of the clear weather radar. My phone started buzzing immediately. Text messages, comments, concerned friends asking what was going on. I ignored them all and sent Maren a simple message. Funny thing about weather apps. They're usually pretty accurate. See you when you get back from your conference. At 7:23 p.m., my phone exploded. Maren was calling, but I let it go to voicemail. She called 6 more times. The voicemails progressed from confused to angry to panicked. "Elias, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm stuck here because of the storm. Why are you posting weird stuff on Facebook? Call me back right now. People are asking me questions and I don't understand what you're trying to do. You're embarrassing me. Take that post down immediately." I was crafting my response when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I watched Maren's silver Lexus pull up to the house. She sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, probably trying to figure out her next move. When she walked through the front door, her face was flushed and her hands were shaking. She was wearing the black dress. "We need to talk," she said. Maren stood in our entryway like an actress who'd forgotten her lines. The black dress that had looked so stunning in the store now seemed like costume evidence. Her makeup was smudged at the corners, not from tears, but from the kind of afternoon activities that don't happen at pharmaceutical conferences. "The weather cleared up faster than expected," she said, her voice artificially bright. "Lucky me, right? I was able to get back for our party after all." I almost admired the performance. 20 years of marriage had taught her exactly how to modulate her voice, how to arrange her face into expressions of innocence. But I'd spent the afternoon becoming a different person, someone who no longer cared about maintaining comfortable illusions. "Sit down," I said, gesturing toward the living room where our anniversary decorations still hung like party favors at a funeral. She perched on the edge of our leather sofa, clutching her purse. "Elias, you're scaring me. What's going on? Why did you cancel the party?" I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward her. Her location history from the past 3 days filled the display, a neat timeline of lies. Hotel, office, hotel, Nolan's apartment complex, hotel again. "The weather was perfect today," I said. 72 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. "But you already knew that, didn't you?" The color drained from her face, but she rallied quickly. "I don't understand what you're trying to prove with this. GPS can be unreliable. I was at the conference center downtown, and yes, I stayed at a hotel nearby. That's what business travelers do." "Which conference center?" The Minneapolis Convention Center." "That's interesting, because I called them. No pharmaceutical conferences this week. I also called your office. Your assistant said you'd taken personal days." Maren's composure cracked like ice on a warming pond. "You called my office? Elias, what is wrong with you? You're acting paranoid and jealous and frankly a little crazy." I clicked to the next screen, Nolan's social media photos. There she was, laughing at a restaurant table, her wedding ring conspicuously absent from the hand resting on his arm. "Nolan's a prolific social media user," I said conversationally. "Lots of photos from business dinners. You're in quite a few of them, going back months, always sitting very close for colleagues." She stood up abruptly, her purse falling to the floor. "I'm not doing this. I'm not sitting here while you interrogate me like some kind of criminal. If you don't trust me after 20 years, then maybe we have bigger problems than I thought." "We do have bigger problems," I agreed, "like the fact that you've been padding your expense reports to cover hotel rooms for your affair. That's fraud, Maren. Federal fraud." The accusation hit her like a physical blow. She actually staggered backward, her hand reaching for the wall to steady herself. That's not... I would never... 17 hotel charges on your company card in the past 4 months," I continued, reading from my notes. "All on days when you claim to be in client meetings. But your mileage reports show you never left the city. You've been billing Pinnacle Health for your affair with Nolan." The fight went out of her all at once. She sank back onto the sofa, her hands covering her face. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "I figured it out this afternoon. But looking back, I probably should have known for months. You've been different, distant, always on your phone, always working late, always talking about Nolan." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. We were working closely on the Morrison account, and he understood the pressure I was under, and you were always buried in your computers." "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't you dare try to make this about me." "I'm not. I'm just saying that things between us haven't been good for a while. We barely talk anymore. We haven't been intimate in months. I felt invisible in my own marriage." "So you decided to become visible to someone else?" She flinched at the bitterness in my voice. "I never meant for it to go this far. I tried to end it twice, but Nolan said he was going to leave his wife, and I thought maybe... Maybe what? That you'd leave me for your married boss? Very romantic." "I don't know what I thought," she snapped, some of her old fire returning. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I felt alive for the first time in years, and I know that's not fair to you, but it's the truth." I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. "Oh, so what now?" "Now we figure out how to fix this. I'll end it with Nolan. We can go to counseling. We can work through this, Elias. 20 years of marriage is worth fighting for." I looked at her, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time in months. She was still beautiful at 41, still the ambitious woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But something fundamental had shifted in the past few hours. The man who had woken up this morning planning an anniversary party was gone, replaced by someone harder and infinitely less forgiving. "I froze our joint accounts this afternoon," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "You what?" I also canceled your credit cards and changed the passwords on all our shared accounts. I've scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney for Monday morning. Elias, no, please, we can fix this. You're right that we haven't been good for a while, I said, standing up. But I was trying to save our marriage. You were trying to replace it. She was crying now, real tears that smudged her makeup and made her look younger and more vulnerable. Please don't do this. I made a mistake, but it doesn't have to end everything. It's not just the affair, Maren. It's the lies. It's the fraud. It's the fact that you were planning to humiliate me at our anniversary party while you were in a hotel room with another man. I wasn't trying to humiliate you. What would you call it? I had 30 people coming over to celebrate our marriage while you were screwing your boss. If I hadn't figured it out, you would have walked in here tonight and played the loving wife in front of all our friends. She had no answer for that because we both knew it was true. My phone buzzed with a text message from our daughter. Mom said you guys are fighting. Coming home now. Ruby's on her way back, I said. We need to figure out what we're going to tell her. We're going to tell her that we're working through some problems, but that we love her, and this isn't her fault, Maren said firmly. We're going to tell her the truth, that you had an affair and were getting divorced. She's 17, Elias. This will destroy her. No, I said, walking toward the stairs. Your affair destroyed her family. I'm just refusing to lie about it. I left Maren sitting in our living room, surrounded by anniversary decorations and the wreckage of 20 years of marriage. As I climbed the stairs to my office, I realized I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. The old Elias would have tried to save the marriage, would have gone to counseling, would have swallowed his pride and forgiven the unforgivable. But the old Elias was gone, replaced by someone who understood that some betrayals can't be undone. I had work to do. Ruby came home like a hurricane in designer jeans, her phone already recording as she burst through the front door. At 17, she documented everything for her social media followers, including what was about to become our family's public destruction. What's going on? She demanded, looking between Maren and me. Jessica's mom saw your Facebook post and called Mom asking if you guys were getting divorced. Mom's been crying in the driveway for 20 minutes. I looked at Maren, who was still sitting on the sofa but had managed to repair her makeup. She'd always been good at quick recoveries, at presenting the right face to the world. Your father is having some kind of breakdown, Maren said carefully. He's making accusations and threatening divorce over a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? Ruby asked, her influencer instinct sensing drama. The kind where your mother has been having an affair with her boss for 4 months, I said. Ruby's phone slipped from her hands and clattered on the hardwood floor. What? Elias, Maren snapped. We agreed to handle this delicately. You agreed. I decided to tell the truth. Ruby looked between us like she was watching a tennis match, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally anger. Mom? Is that true? Maren's composure cracked again. It's complicated, sweetheart. Adult relationships are complicated, and sometimes people make mistakes when they're unhappy. That's not an answer, Ruby said, her voice getting louder. Did you cheat on Dad or not? The silence stretched until Maren finally nodded, tears starting fresh. Yes, but I never meant for it to happen, and I want to fix it. Ruby stared at her mother for a long moment, then turned to me. And you're divorcing her? Yes. Good, Ruby said flatly. She deserves it. Maren flinched like she'd been slapped. Ruby, please. I know you're angry, but I'm still your mother. A mother who cheated on her husband and lied about it, Ruby shot back. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is going to be? Everyone at school follows your social media. Everyone's going to know. That was vintage Ruby, making everything about her social standing. But I could see the real hurt underneath the self-absorption. She was 17, and her world was imploding. I'm sorry, Maren whispered. I'm so sorry, baby. I never wanted to hurt you or your father. But you did hurt us, Ruby said. And now everyone's going to know our family is a mess. My phone buzzed with another text message, then another. Word was spreading through our social circle like wildfire. The Facebook post had been subtle, but people weren't stupid. They could read between the lines. I'm going to my room, Ruby announced. I need to figure out how to spin this online before someone else does. After she left, Maren turned to me with desperate eyes. She'll forgive me eventually. Kids are resilient. Maybe, I said, but I won't. What do you want from me, Elias? I've admitted I was wrong. I've apologized. I've agreed to end it with Nolan. What more can I do? Nothing, I said simply. There's nothing you can do because I don't want to be married to someone who could lie to my face for 4 months. So that's it? 20 years of marriage and you're just throwing it away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already threw it away when you decided Nolan was worth more than our family." She stood up abruptly, her sadness transforming into anger. "You know what? Fine. If you want to be the victim here, go ahead. But don't pretend this marriage was perfect before Nolan came along. You've been emotionally absent for years. You care more about your computers than you do about me. At least I cared enough not to cheat. No, you just checked out completely. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you asked about my day, my dreams, my feelings? You turned me into a roommate, Elias. Nolan made me feel like a woman again." "Nolan is married with 2 kids," I pointed out. "He made you feel like a mistress." That hit home. Maren's face crumpled and she sank back onto the sofa. I know it was wrong. I know I'm the villain here. But I'm not evil, Elias. I'm just a woman who made terrible choices because she felt invisible in her own life. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the expense reports, the lies, the planning it had taken to maintain the affair for months. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a sustained campaign of deception. "I need you to leave," I said. "This is my house too. And we'll figure out the property division in the divorce. But right now, tonight, I need you to leave." "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know. Maybe Nolan has room at his place. Oh wait, he's married." She flinched again. "You're being cruel." "I'm being honest. There's a difference, though I understand why you might not recognize it." Maren gathered her purse and headed toward the stairs. "I'm going to pack a bag, and then I'm going to stay at Jennifer's." Jennifer Treadwell was Maren's best friend and co-worker, a woman who had never liked me and made no effort to hide it. She worked in HR at Pinnacle Health and had always encouraged Maren's complaints about our marriage. "Give Jennifer my regards," I said. "I'm sure she'll have lots of advice about how this is all my fault." After Maren left, the house felt different. Quieter, but somehow more honest. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my office, staring at the evidence I'd compiled. The photos, the call logs, the expense reports. It was all there, a comprehensive record of betrayal. But something was bothering me, a detail that didn't quite fit. I pulled up Nolan's social media again and studied the photos more carefully. In several of them, Jennifer was also present, sitting across from Nolan and Maren at various restaurants and bars. That wasn't unusual, they were all co-workers, but something about Jennifer's expression in the photos caught my attention. She wasn't looking at Nolan. In every single photo, Jennifer was looking at Maren with an intensity that seemed oddly personal. I made a mental note to dig deeper into that connection. In my experience, affairs rarely happened in isolation. There were always enablers, cheerleaders, people who helped maintain the lies. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my brother Mike's number. "What the hell is going on?" he asked without preamble. "Sarah saw your Facebook post and called me. Are you and Maren splitting up?" "She's been having an affair," I said simply. "Jesus, I'm sorry, man. How did you find out?" I gave him the abbreviated version, the fake blizzard, the location data, the evidence. Mike listened without interrupting, occasionally making disgusted sounds. "What do you need?" he asked when I finished. "Nothing right now. Just don't be surprised if this gets messy." "How messy?" I looked at my computer screen, at all the evidence I'd gathered in just a few hours. "I'm still figuring that out." After Mike hung up, I sat in the quiet house and realized something had fundamentally changed inside me. The man who had woken up this morning planning an anniversary party was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that nice guys don't just finish last, they get humiliated while finishing last. I opened a new document on my computer and began typing. If Maren wanted to play games, I was going to show her what happened when you challenged someone who understood systems, patterns, and how to exploit weaknesses. The old Elias would have tried to save his marriage. The new Elias was going to destroy the people who had destroyed it. Monday morning arrived with the artificial cheerfulness of a pharmaceutical sales meeting. I sat in my divorce attorney's office, watching Margaret Voss review the evidence I'd compiled over the weekend. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in high-conflict divorces and had the reputation of a shark in a business suit. "This is thorough," she said, flipping through printed screenshots of call logs, expense reports, and location data. "Your wife's expense fraud alone gives us significant leverage. The adultery is one thing, but defrauding her employer to fund the affair? That's a federal crime." "I don't want her to go to jail," I said. "I just want her to understand that actions have consequences." Margaret looked at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Crowley, in my experience, people who commit adultery and fraud don't suddenly develop a conscience when confronted with evidence. They double down. Are you prepared for this to get ugly?" "It's already ugly." "It can get uglier. Your wife works with her lover. She has allies at that company. She's going to fight back, and she's going to try to make you the villain. I thought about Maren spending the weekend at Jennifer's house, probably crafting a narrative where I was the emotionally distant husband who drove her into another man's arms. By now, half of Pinnacle Health had probably heard some version of that story. Let her try, I said. Margaret smiled. Not warmly, but with professional appreciation. Good. We'll file for divorce citing adultery and seek full disclosure of all her financial records. The expense fraud gives us grounds to demand an emergency injunction freezing her access to company accounts pending investigation. Can you do that? I know people. Your wife won't be able to use her company credit card for anything until this is resolved. That should make continuing her affair more expensive. I left the attorney's office feeling like I'd just loaded ammunition for a war I hadn't started but was definitely going to finish. My phone had been buzzing all morning with texts from friends and family who had seen my Facebook post. Most were supportive, but a few were clearly fishing for gossip. The most interesting message came from someone unexpected, Tony Ricci, who worked in IT security at Pinnacle Health. We'd collaborated on a few projects over the years and had developed a professional friendship. Hey man, heard about you and Maren. Sorry. Also, thought you should know. There's some weird stuff happening with expense reports in her department. Might want to grab coffee sometime. I called him immediately. Tony, it's Elias. You free for lunch today? Yeah, but let's meet somewhere discreet. The Ironworks Diner on 5th Street, 1 o'clock. The Ironworks was exactly what it sounded like. A blue-collar diner in the shadow of an abandoned steel plant. The kind of place where pharmaceutical sales reps would never think to look for their cheating colleagues' husbands. Tony was already in a corner booth when I arrived, nursing a coffee and looking uncomfortable. He was a thin, nervous guy who took information security seriously, which meant he noticed patterns that other people missed. This is awkward as hell, he said as I sat down, but I figured you should know what's happening at Pinnacle. What's happening at Pinnacle? Your wife's not the only one with questionable expense reports. Her whole team has been flagged by the automated fraud detection system. Hotels, restaurants, travel that doesn't match client locations. It's like they've been treating the company credit cards as personal entertainment funds. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. How many people are we talking about? Maren, Nolan, Jennifer Treadwell, and 2 other sales reps. They've been running up thousands in questionable charges over the past 6 months. Jennifer's involved? Up to her neck. She's been approving expense reports that should have been rejected, probably in exchange for being included in their little party circuit. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. This wasn't just an affair between Maren and Nolan. It was a group of co-workers using company money to fund their social activities, with Jennifer providing HR cover. What's going to happen to them? Tony glanced around nervously. The investigation is just starting, but it looks bad. Federal fraud charges bad. The company's bringing in outside investigators because Jennifer compromised the internal oversight. When will this become public? Soon. Maybe this week. The company can't sit on federal fraud allegations. I thanked Tony and drove home with my mind racing. Maren had painted her affair as a romantic mistake, a moment of weakness brought on by marital problems. But the reality was much uglier. She was part of a corrupt group that had been stealing from their employer for months. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway, Maren's number. We need to talk, she said without preamble. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Can you meet me at Jennifer's? There are some things you need to understand before you do something we'll both regret. Such as? Such as the fact that you're about to destroy more than just our marriage. There are other people involved, people with families and careers. If you push this fraud investigation, you're going to ruin lives. I'm not pushing anything. I'm just getting divorced. Don't play dumb, Elias. I know you've been digging into company records. I know you've been talking to people at Pinnacle. You want revenge? Fine, but think about the collateral damage. The way you thought about collateral damage when you were stealing from your employer to fund your affair. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Maren spoke again, her voice was different, harder, and more calculating. Come to Jennifer's house tonight, 7 o'clock. We'll explain everything, and then you can decide how far you want to take this. We? The people whose lives you're about to destroy. Come alone, Elias, and bring an open mind. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my car, staring at Jennifer's address in my phone's contact list. Every instinct told me this was a trap, that Maren and her allies were planning some kind of intervention or manipulation. But I was curious about what they thought they could say that would change my mind. More than curious, I was eager to see how they planned to justify months of lies, theft, and betrayal. I spent the afternoon preparing for war. I copied all my evidence to multiple cloud storage accounts, emailed key documents to my attorney, and set up my phone to automatically record any conversation. If Maren wanted to play games, I was going to document every word. At 6:45 p.m., I drove to Jennifer's house in the suburbs, a McMansion that was too big for one person and decorated with the aggressive blandness of someone trying too hard to project success. 4 cars were parked in the driveway: Maren's Lexus, Nolan's BMW, Jennifer's Mercedes, and a Honda I didn't recognize. Whatever this meeting was, it involved the entire corrupt crew. I checked my phone's recording app, took a deep breath, and rang the doorbell. Jennifer answered, wearing a fake smile and a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Elias," she said warmly, as if we were old friends instead of people who had barely tolerated each other for years. "Thank you for coming. Everyone's in the living room." I followed her inside, noting the expensive furniture and artwork that seemed inconsistent with an HR manager's salary. The living room looked like a stage set for a confrontation, with Maren, Nolan, and 2 other people I recognized from Pinnacle Health arranged in carefully chosen seats. "Elias?" Maren said, standing up nervously. "Thank you for coming. I know this is awkward, but we need to clear the air." Nolan stood up too, extending his hand like we were meeting at a business conference instead of a gathering of adulterers and thieves. "Elias, good to see you. I think there's been some misunderstandings we can work through." I ignored his hand and looked around the room. "So this is the fraud club? How cozy." The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Jennifer's fake smile flickered, and one of the other sales reps, a woman named Patricia, actually gasped. "That's not fair," Maren said. "We asked you here to explain the situation, not to be insulted." "Then explain," I said, settling into an empty chair. "Explain how you've been stealing from your employer to fund your affair. Explain how Jennifer has been covering for you. Explain how any of this is my fault." Nolan stepped forward, his artificial confidence intact. "Look, Elias, I understand you're hurt. If I were in your position, I'd probably feel the same way. But the situation between Maren and me, it's not what you think." "Really? What is it then?" "It's love," he said simply. "Real love. The kind that doesn't follow rules or timelines. Maren and I didn't plan for this to happen, but when it did, we couldn't fight it." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized he actually believed what he was saying. In his mind, he was the romantic hero of the story, not a middle-aged married man stealing company money to impress his subordinate. "How touching," I said. "And the expense fraud? Is that love too?" Jennifer leaned forward, her HR training kicking in. "There's no fraud, Elias. There have been some irregularities in expense reporting, but nothing criminal. The company is conducting a routine audit, and we're confident everything will be resolved." "Irregularities," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" "We're calling it what it is," Patricia said, speaking for the first time. "A witch hunt triggered by a jealous husband who can't accept that his marriage failed." The room went silent. Even Maren looked shocked at Patricia's bluntness. "Did you just call me a jealous husband?" I asked quietly. Patricia, apparently emboldened by what she thought was support from the group, doubled down. "If the shoe fits. You're trying to destroy people's careers because your wife fell in love with someone else. That's not justice. That's revenge." I smiled, and something in my expression made everyone in the room shift uncomfortably. "You're absolutely right," I said, standing up. "It is revenge. And you know what? I'm just getting started." I left Jennifer's house with a clarity that felt almost euphoric. They had shown their hand, not just the affair, but the entitlement, the victim-blaming, the absolute certainty that they could manipulate me into silence. Patricia calling me a jealous husband had been the final straw, but in a way, I was grateful. It eliminated any lingering doubt about what I needed to do. The next morning, I drove to the Ironworks boxing gym on the south side of town. It was a place I'd discovered 6 months ago when my doctor suggested I needed more physical activity to manage stress. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been trying to manage the stress of a failing marriage while my wife was creating new stress by cheating. The gym was exactly what you'd expect from a place called the Ironworks. Concrete floors, heavy bags, the smell of sweat and determination. The clientele was mostly blue-collar guys who worked with their hands and settled disputes with their fists. It was the opposite of Pinnacle Health's corporate environment, which made it perfect for what I had in mind. Toby Martinez, the gym's owner and head trainer, was working the heavy bag when I walked in. At 55, he was still in better shape than most men half his age, with the kind of functional muscle that came from years of hard work rather than vanity workouts. "Elias," he called out, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Didn't expect to see you today. Thought you had some anniversary thing this weekend." "Change of plans," I said. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Toby gestured toward his office, a cramped space overlooking the main gym floor. The walls were covered with photos of fighters he'd trained, local tough guys who had learned to channel their anger into something productive. "What's on your mind?" he asked, settling behind a desk that looked like it had survived several wars. "My wife's been having an affair," I said simply, "with her boss. They've been stealing company money to fund it." Toby nodded slowly. He'd heard worse stories, probably on a weekly basis. "Sorry to hear that. What do you need?" "The guy she's been cheating with. Nolan Trent. He's a typical corporate type. Thinks he's tough because he wears expensive suits and drives a BMW. I want him to understand that actions have consequences." "You want me to have a conversation with him?" "I want you to invite him to the gym. Tell him you're starting a corporate fitness program, executives only. Make it sound exclusive and expensive. He'll come." Toby leaned back in his chair, studying me. "And then what?" "Then I'll have a conversation with him, in front of your regulars, about respect and consequences." "You sure about this? Once you go down this road, there's no going back." I thought about the meeting at Jennifer's house, about Patricia calling me a jealous husband, about Nolan talking about real love, while his wife and kids waited at home. "I'm sure." Toby made the call that afternoon. I listened from the office as he pitched Nolan on an exclusive executive fitness program, complete with personal training and networking opportunities with successful local businessmen. The hook was perfect, appealing to Nolan's vanity and his constant need to feel important. "Thursday at 6, Toby said after hanging up. He sounded very interested. Thursday evening, I arrived at the gym early and changed into workout clothes. The regular crowd was there: construction workers, mechanics, a few off-duty cops. These were men who understood loyalty and consequences, who wouldn't have much sympathy for a married executive cheating on his wife. Nolan arrived at exactly 6 o'clock, wearing designer workout clothes that probably cost more than most of the regulars made in a week. He looked around the gym with barely concealed distaste, clearly having second thoughts about the exclusive program he'd signed up for. "Mr. Trent," Toby called out, "welcome to the Ironworks. Let me introduce you to your training partner." Nolan's face went pale when he saw me emerge from the locker room. "What is this?" "This is your fitness consultation," I said pleasantly. "I thought we should discuss your cardiovascular health, specifically how much stress your heart can handle." The gym had gone quiet. The regulars sensed drama and were positioning themselves for a good view. Nolan looked around nervously, realizing he was surrounded by men who wouldn't care about his corporate title or his expensive car. "I'm leaving," he said, turning toward the door. "Actually, you're not," I said, stepping between him and the exit. "See, you've been telling people that you and my wife are in love. Real love, I think you called it. I want to discuss that. Elias, this is between you and Maren. I don't want any trouble." "But you already caused trouble. You caused trouble when you started screwing my wife. You caused trouble when you helped her steal from your company, and you caused trouble when you sat in Jennifer's living room and tried to justify it as romance." One of the regulars, a guy named Jimmy who worked construction, laughed. "This the corporate hero who's been playing house with your wife?" "That's him," I confirmed. "Nolan Trent, regional sales manager, married father of 2, expert in expense account fraud and adultery." Nolan's face flushed red. "You can't humiliate me like this." "I'm not humiliating you," I said. "You humiliated yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." "What do you want?" he asked desperately. "I want you to understand something very clearly. My wife thinks she's in love with you, but you're just a middle-aged man having a midlife crisis. You're not leaving your wife. You're not starting a new life with Maren. You're just a cheater who got caught." "That's not true." "It is true. Because if you actually loved my wife, you would have divorced your wife before starting an affair. If you actually loved my wife, you wouldn't have used company money to impress her. If you actually loved my wife, you would have had the courage to face me man to man instead of sneaking around like a coward." The gym was completely silent now. Even Toby was watching with professional interest, like he was evaluating a fighter's technique. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to end your affair with my wife. You're going to confess the expense fraud to your company, and you're going to stay away from my family." "And if I don't?" I smiled, and several of the regulars chuckled. "Then we'll have another conversation. But next time, it won't be as friendly." Nolan looked around the room, taking in the faces of men who clearly weren't impressed by his corporate credentials. "This is illegal. This is harassment." "No," Jimmy said from across the room. "This is a community service announcement. We're announcing that you're a cheating piece of garbage who steals from his employer." More laughter from the regulars. Nolan was sweating now, and not from exercise. "I could call the police," he said weakly. "And tell them what?" I asked. That you came to a boxing gym and got your feelings hurt? That a group of working men don't respect adulterers and thieves? Nolan had no answer for that. He stood in the middle of the gym, surrounded by hostile faces, realizing that his corporate armor meant nothing in this environment. I need to go, he said finally. Yes, you do, I agreed. But remember what we discussed. End it with my wife. Confess to your company. Stay away from my family. He practically ran for the door, leaving behind the smell of expensive cologne and fear. The regulars erupted in applause and laughter. That felt good, Jimmy said, clapping me on the shoulder. Corporate types think they can do whatever they want without consequences. They can't, I said simply. Toby walked over with a slight smile. Feel better? Much better. But I'm not done yet. What's next? I thought about Maren, probably sitting in Jennifer's house right now, planning their next move. They thought they were dealing with the same passive, conflict-avoidant man who had tolerated years of emotional distance and disrespect. They were about to learn otherwise. Next, I deal with the people who enabled this mess, I said, starting with Jennifer. The HR lady who's been covering for them? The HR lady who's been covering for them, I confirmed. She thinks she's untouchable because she controls personnel files and knows company secrets. Time to show her that everyone has vulnerabilities. I spent Friday morning doing research. Jennifer Treadwell had worked at Pinnacle Health for 8 years, climbing from entry-level HR assistant to manager through a combination of competence and strategic alliance building. She was single, lived alone in her overpriced house, and had built her identity around being the power behind the throne in Pinnacle's sales department. She was also vulnerable in ways she probably didn't realize. Public records showed that Jennifer had bought her house 3 years ago for $400,000, significantly more than she could afford on an HR manager's salary. Her social media showed a lifestyle of expensive restaurants, designer clothes, and luxury vacations that didn't match her income. Most interesting of all, Jennifer had been promoted to HR manager just 2 months after the expense fraud pattern began. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. I called Tony Ricci again. I need to know more about Jennifer's role in the expense fraud, I said. What kind of more? The kind that explains how an HR manager affords a $400,000 house and a Mercedes on a $60,000 salary. Tony was quiet for a moment. Meet me at the Ironworks diner again. 1 o'clock? And Elias? This conversation never happened. At the diner, Tony spread out printouts of financial records and expense reports like a detective presenting evidence. Jennifer's not just covering for the fraud, he said quietly. She's the architect of it. Look at this. He showed me a pattern of expense approvals that revealed the true scope of the conspiracy. Jennifer hadn't just been rubber-stamping fraudulent reports. She'd been coaching the sales team on how to structure their theft to avoid detection. She gets a cut, I realized. 20%, according to the digital trail. The sales team kicks back part of their fraudulent expenses to Jennifer in cash, and she uses her HR access to make sure no one investigates too closely. How much money are we talking about? Over the past 18 months, probably $200,000 in fraudulent expenses. Jennifer's take would be around $40,000. Enough to make a down payment on an expensive house. Enough to fund a lifestyle she couldn't otherwise afford. Enough to constitute serious federal fraud charges. When will the company investigators figure this out? They probably already have. The FBI is getting involved next week. I thanked Tony and drove home with a sense of anticipation. Jennifer thought she was the puppet master, the one pulling strings and protecting her friends. She had no idea that her entire criminal enterprise was about to collapse. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Maren again. Nolan told me about last night, she said without preamble. How could you humiliate him like that? The same way he humiliated me, publicly and thoroughly. Those men could have hurt him. You put him in real danger. No, I put him in an uncomfortable situation. There's a difference, though I understand why you might not recognize it. This has to stop, Elias. You're destroying people's lives. I'm revealing the consequences of people's choices. There's a difference. What do you want? What will it take for you to leave us alone? I considered the question. What did I want? A week ago, I would have said I wanted my marriage back, wanted things to return to normal, but normal had been built on lies, and I was no longer interested in comfortable illusions. I want you to face the consequences of your choices, I said finally. All of you. No more hiding behind Jennifer's HR protection. No more blaming me for your affair. No more stealing from your company to fund your romance. And then what? You'll forgive and forget? No, I said simply. Then I'll be satisfied that justice was served. Justice? This isn't justice, Elias. This is revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing. I hung up and sat in my car, thinking about the week ahead. The FBI investigation would become public knowledge soon. Nolan would probably confess to his wife to get ahead of the criminal charges. Jennifer's financial house of cards would collapse. And Maren would finally understand that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're untouchable. Especially for people who think they're untouchable. The FBI raid on Pinnacle Health happened on Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was monitoring the company's social media feeds when employees started posting confused updates about federal agents in the building. By noon, the local news was running stories about a major fraud investigation at one of the city's largest pharmaceutical companies. By evening, the names were public: Maren Crowley, Nolan Trent, Jennifer Treadwell, and 3 other sales representatives, all facing federal charges for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and theft of company funds. My phone started ringing immediately. Friends, family, reporters who had somehow gotten my number. I ignored them all and drove to the ironworks for my regular workout, where the regulars greeted me like a conquering hero. "Saw the news," Jimmy said, wrapping his hands before hitting the heavy bag. "Your wife and her boyfriend made the evening broadcast. Federal fraud charges. That's serious business." "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes," I said, echoing something Toby had told me years ago. "What happens now?" "Now they face the consequences of their choices." Ruby came home that evening looking shell-shocked. Her carefully curated social media presence had been destroyed by her mother's arrest, and she was struggling to process the reality that her family had become a public scandal. "Everyone at school is talking about it," she said, collapsing onto the sofa. "The FBI raided Mom's office. She's been arrested. This is insane." "This is what happens when people think rules don't apply to them," I said. "But she's my mom. Whatever she did wrong, she's still my mom. And she'll always be your mom. But she's also a criminal who stole from her employer and lied to her family for months." Ruby looked at me with something approaching respect for the first time in years. "You knew this was going to happen, didn't you? When you changed your Facebook status, when you confronted her about the affair, you already knew about the fraud." "I suspected. I investigated. I confirmed. And then you destroyed her." "I revealed the truth. She destroyed herself." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Tonight, Jennifer's house. Come alone." I showed the message to Ruby. "Your mother wants to meet. Are you going?" "Absolutely." Jennifer's house was dark except for a single light in the living room. I parked on the street and walked to the front door, noting that only Maren's car was in the driveway. Either this was a smaller gathering than last time, or the others were too smart to show up. Maren answered the door looking like she'd aged 5 years in a week. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her makeup was minimal, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her typical designer outfits. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "Where is everyone? Where's your support group?" Nolan's lawyer told him not to have any contact with co-conspirators. Patricia and the others are following the same advice. Jennifer's been arrested. "And you?" "I'm out on bail. My lawyer says I'm looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison." She led me into the living room, which looked different without its usual crowd of conspirators. Smaller, shabbier, like a stage set after the play had ended. "I need you to understand something," Maren said, sitting across from me. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "Which part? The affair or the fraud?" "Any of it. The thing with Nolan started innocently. Working dinners, late meetings, shared frustrations about the company. The expense account stuff was Jennifer's idea. She said everyone did it, that the company expected a certain amount of creative accounting. And you believed her?" "I wanted to believe her. The affair was exciting, but it was also expensive. Hotel rooms, nice restaurants, weekend trips. I couldn't afford it on my salary, and I couldn't exactly ask you for money to cheat on you. So you stole it. So I made poor choices. Multiple poor choices, compounding over months until I was in so deep I couldn't see a way out." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine remorse. Not self-pity, not anger, but actual understanding of what she had done. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want you to know that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught, but sorry for what I did to you, to our marriage, to Ruby. I want you to know that you were right to leave me." "That's it? That's it? I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to help with legal fees or character references. I'm just asking you to believe that I understand how badly I screwed up." We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of suburban evening, kids playing, dogs barking, the distant hum of traffic, normal life continuing while our family disintegrated. "What happens to Ruby?" I asked finally. "She stays with you. I'll probably be in prison, and even if I'm not, she's better off with the parent who didn't become a federal criminal. She's angry at both of us. She should be angry at me. You didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't a perfect husband. No, but you were a faithful one. You were an honest one. You never stole money or lied about where you were or who you were with. Maren wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I convinced myself that our marriage was broken, that you didn't care about me anymore. But the truth is, I broke it. I stopped trying to fix our problems and started looking for an escape. Why Nolan? Because he paid attention to me? Because he made me feel important and desired and alive? Because he was there when you weren't? And Jennifer, how did she fit into all this? Maren's expression darkened. Jennifer has been in love with me for years. I thought she was just being a good friend, supporting me through my marriage problems. But she was actually encouraging those problems, hoping I'd leave you for her. For her? Jennifer's gay, Elias. She's been in love with me since we started working together, but I was married and straight, so she settled for being my best friend. When I started having problems with you, she saw an opportunity. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. She pushed you toward the affair. She introduced me to Nolan at a company party. She suggested the working dinners. She came up with the expense account scheme. She thought if she could get me involved in something scandalous, I'd be forced to leave you and turn to her for support. But you fell for Nolan instead of her. I fell for the excitement, the attention, the feeling of being wanted. Nolan was just the delivery mechanism. And Jennifer went along with it anyway? She thought she could wait it out. She figured Nolan would eventually go back to his wife, and I'd need someone to pick up the pieces. She didn't count on you fighting back. I thought about Jennifer's expression in those social media photos, the way she'd looked at Maren with desperate intensity. The expensive house, the luxury lifestyle funded by fraud, the careful orchestration of events that had led to this moment. She played a long game, I said. She played a long game and lost everything. Her career, her freedom, her chance with me, all because she couldn't accept that I wasn't available. And now? Now she's in federal custody, and I'm facing 5 to 10 years in prison for conspiracy to commit fraud. Nolan's probably going to testify against all of us to reduce his sentence. The company is suing us for restitution, and you're free to start over with someone who deserves you. I stood up to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it ended this way. No, you're not, Maren said with a sad smile. You're satisfied that justice was served, and you should be. She was right. I wasn't sorry about the consequences. I was sorry about the choices that had made those consequences necessary. But mostly, I was relieved that the lies were finally over. I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, past houses where normal families were having normal evenings, where husbands and wives weren't federal criminals and teenagers weren't dealing with public scandal. Ruby was waiting in the living room when I got home, her laptop open to news coverage of the Pinnacle health arrests. Mom's going to prison, isn't she? She asked. Probably. Good, she said fiercely. She deserves it. Don't say that. She's still your mother, and she loves you. She has a funny way of showing it. I sat down next to my daughter and closed her laptop. Your mother made terrible choices, but they were her choices. They don't define you, and they don't have to define our family. What family? It's just us now. Then we'll figure out how to be a family of 2. Ruby leaned against my shoulder, something she hadn't done in years. Dad? Yeah? I'm proud of you for fighting back. I'm proud that you didn't just let them get away with it. Sometimes standing up for yourself looks like revenge to the people who wronged you. Sometimes revenge is just justice with better timing. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and realized she was going to be okay. We were both going to be okay. The old life was over, but the new one was just beginning, and for the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow.